Welcome to Evo 10 ECU Flash Training Part 15. In this video, we're going to learn how to work with our cranking fuel and our warm-up enrichment tables in our Evo 10 applications. Now, our cranking fuel is going to be used to allow the engine to fire up and run from cranking conditions. We need to inject a certain amount of fuel into the engine so it fires up. And then we're going to find once the engine fires up and runs, it's going to transition into a warm-up enrichment table if the engine coolant temperature is cold enough. The warm-up enrichment table is going to be applying additional fuel so that the engine is going to run properly. We're going to learn how to actually scale out our cranking fuel injector tables based on the injector size that we're working with or based on ethanol content if we're running an ethanol-based fuel. And then we'll also take a look at using our Megalog viewer to create a custom histogram to determine what kind of fuel values we need to have in our warm-up enrichment tables so that we have everything dialed properly so when the engine fires up and runs, it's going to run appropriate air fuel until it comes up to operating temperature. We're going to have a lot to cover, so let's jump into this video so we can check this out. Okay, so let's get started. We're going to be taking a look at our cranking fuel and our warm-up enrichment tables in our Evo 10 applications. And we need to make sure these are right so the engine's allowed to fire up and run from either a hot start or a cold start. And then as it's coming up to operating temperature from a cold start, it's going to have the appropriate amount of fuel. It's not going to run too rich or too lean. It's going to be dialed in so the engine is going to run smooth and predictably. Now, we have a couple things to cover and some core tables here we need to take a look at. Let's take a look here in a 52680022 2008 USDM 5-speed manual file. That's going to be what I have open here. We're going to the current ROM metadata and move down here into the fuel area. So under fuel, we're going to be taking a look at a few tables here. So we're going to have our cranking enrichment IPW adder table. And then we're going to have here our cranking IPW table. And then lastly, we're going to have, if we look down towards the bottom in our window here, all the way towards the bottom, our ECT fuel compensation 1. We're actually going to have two of these tables here. We're going to have our compensation 1 and 2, but we'll just look here at 1 for right now, and then we'll talk about the relationship the other one has to our number 1 table here, so the table 2 to table 1. So very first thing we have here is our cranking enrichment IPW table. This is better known as a prime pulse table. You can think of this as a prime on a carburetor. We can find this table here is based on coolant temperature, and then the values in here, these are the actual milliseconds. It's going to be injecting into the engine when we're cranking it over for the first 1 or 2 engine revolutions. Then we're going to find that we have our cranking injector pulse width table. That's also going to be based on coolant temperature, and it's going to be based here on the actual injector pulse width. It's going to be sending into the engine. It's going to be going and injecting into the engine. What we're going to find here is that our cranking enrichment IPW table, this is again a prime pulse. After the first 1 or 2 engine revolutions, it'll kick into our cranking IPW table here and start to source these values. So this is going to be essentially a primer getting fuel into the engine, where this is going to be more of the long-term cranking pulse width that we're actually going to be sourcing and working with. Now, what's interesting here is the cranking injector pulse width. The values that we find in here, these will add, in addition to our injector latency, we've talked about this in our injector latency video here, into our injector battery voltage latency compensation. So depending on what the battery voltage is going to be, let's just say it's going to be something like 9.38 volts. It'll take here 1.695. If we're at something like 68 degrees, it'll add it to 11.7 milliseconds, and that would be the total injector pulse width added into the engine. Now, there is some other calculations that will be increasing this just slightly, but these are the core values that are going to be adding together to get our long-term injector pulse width. So again, our cranking enrichment injector pulse width, this is a prime pulse used for the first 1 or 2 cranking revolutions. Then the cranking IPW, or the cranking injector pulse width, plus the latency, this will be used after it exits that 1 or 2 engine revolutions under cranking. And this is going to be what's used for the more of the long-term injector pulse width. Now, we also have here our engine fuel compensation table. This is used for warm-up enrichment. So after it's cranked and fired up, it'll run, and there's actually going to be a period of time where there should be a post-start table that we don't have defined in the XML code, but it is there in all of these ROM IDs, but it's just not defined properly, where it's going to be adding fuel for the first 5 or 10 seconds. Then it transitions over here to our fuel compensation warm-up table. So what I have coming up on the screen right now is going to kind of help better illustrate. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here. And you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.